So last year, I had a whole character arc where I recreated sick looking manga panels from some of my favorite manga, and now, backed by unpopular demand, I am back at it again because this is still so much fun to do. Sometimes you scratch that itch when you really want to draw something but have no idea what to draw. I would always go back and do some good old master studies. And because I grew up being a weeb, manga artist qualifies as masters to me. And sometimes my master studies of choice is to recreate manga pages from series that I have enjoyed reading. And it's not like this is a new thing on my channel. I recreated a page from Full Metal Alchemist. The most fun part about the drawing was doing those line effects in the background with the BAM shaped out. Then this page from Inuyasha had a blast doing all those cross hatches and drawing out that tree. And then a page from the one and only One Piece. Once again, effect lines are goated, and getting to all go into the same direction was super tedious, but the most fulfilling part of the drawing. This one here is from Death Note, where the challenge was to emulate Takashi Obata's drawing style, which is such a far cry from my usual drawing style. And last but not least, a page from Kagurabachi. It's one of the more recent series that I'm reading and is still ongoing on Shonen Jump, but I swear every couple of chapters has like the most awesome action panel, and sometimes I just have the urge to recreate all of those pages, but this one was from the very first chapter. I made videos of each of these drawings, so I'll put the playlist in the description if you like to watch those. And with that said, we are going to move on to today's manga's recreation, and we will be drawing Kagurabachi once again. I had some other manga panels from other series that I wanted to do on my list, but I was just itching to draw these two specific pages for a very long time. Hopefully this isn't spoilers or anything. What I was really looking forward to recreating was the fisheye perspective on that right page over there. So like all of my good old manga pages, I start with a blue Pilot Eno mechanical pencil and an eraser and my A4 deleter manga manuscript paper, and then I just start eyeballing things. Because tracing would honestly just take all of the fun away. So I usually start with the border just to make sure I at least have the panels portioned out before filling them out with characters and background. Also, side note, I lowered the lighting a little bit while recording this part just so that we could actually see those blue pencil lines. In my previous videos, I had a habit of filming with my bright ass ring light and then not notice that the blue was washed out and completely impossible to see. Another thing I like to do early on is to add in all of those speech bubbles, just so I know how much space I'm really working with when I draw everything else, and it's pretty much just staring and observing the master copy. Draw on the paper and then just erase and redraw until everything looks right. I also realized that no matter what I'm drawing, whether it's an illustration or a comic panel or a manga master study, I will always draw in the character's head first. I know professional would usually block in the entire body and then get the guidelines in a good spot before filling it out with the human figure and the clothing and all of those finer details, but no matter how much I try, I just always draw the face first for some reason. Whatever gets the job done, I suppose. Honestly, I don't learn a whole lot while drawing one-to-one from a master study, but I do feel that my ability to handle a pen levels up, just because there are so many different types of lines and line effect and speed line to account for, and just to put my hand steadiness and pen grip to the test. Which I still think is a very important skill to hone in just because I do work with this pen a lot, and will continue to draw my personal comics using these supplies in the very unforeseeable future. Anyways, I won't bore you guys with the rest of the sketching phase, so I will show you guys the finished sketch over here. The one thing about sketching is that I try to lay down the lines as clean and close to the end result as possible because I do want to be sure to set myself up for a smooth sailing inking session. Especially since there are a lot of effect line and really tedious details of the background to make sure I included. But while sketching did take me roughly around 4 to 5 hours, it's one of those small payoffs that you do get along the way. So now we will transition into inking, which is very exciting. And all of my inking is done with this nifty G pen. Now while the end result is super intimidating, I am supported by a well-drawn sketch underneath, so as long as I chip away at drawing in all of the lines, the closer I can get to overcoming this challenge. I've already went ahead and did a bit of the line art beforehand, but for the background, I'm using a 0.3 Copic multiliner pen and a 6-inch clear ruler to work with the background line. I'm always nervous using a G pen with a ruler just because the ink could smear and get all over the place. I always opt for a multiliner pen. It's a bit out of focus here, but I am trying to make sure that the line art isn't as thick as the panel borders, just to give a bit of a hierarchy on where the eyes should land and focus. While the background is detailed, the focus of the drawings are actually on the characters in the scene, so I continued on with those things in mind. For me, backgrounds are the least exciting things to ink since I would much rather draw in the character, but I work on my least favorite things first so that I can save the fun parts for last. This part is supposed to take forever since there are so many things to draw in, but eventually things will be done with time. And there you have it. You can see all of those background lines are drawn in and the characters and the dialogue boxes are still in blue pencil. I will say, no, I did not have a compass at the time, so my circles of these two panels here are a bit lopsided. No matter how many times I eyeball and think I've drawn a really close to perfect circle, I have indeed not. And then it is cruise control from here. I'm now also adding in the blood effect that's all over the reference photo, so that does add a lot more flavor to the drawing. I also try to embrace that not all of my lines are perfect. I do feel that when lines are drawn traditionally on paper, it gives a very subtle feel that's very hard to replicate digitally. Not to say that digital drawings are bad and that I don't prefer them, I actually do love digital illustration. But once you've read enough mangas or comics, you can sort of tell if it's done on paper from just from the line art alone. Hard to quite explain it. Pausing my thoughts here just to say that I am adding all of the blood splatters on the wall next. When it comes to inking, I don't really have a specific order that I draw in things. I just kind of draw whatever I'm most interested in at the time, and then you just keep doing that until it's completed. One of my favorite things about drawing is hitting that flow state. So when you get super sucked in your work and then not even have any consideration of the world around you, and then once you look up at a clock, suddenly 3 hours have passed. That's a feeling I always strive to get during all of my drawing sessions. Hence why I did make sure that my inking stage was as smooth as possible with a very nice sketch. Another thing about G Pen, which is this tool that I'm using, it's very easy to achieve a variety of line weight based on the pressure that you put on the pen. But that amount of freedom also means that there's a lot of room to mess up. So that's for me to say that inking is super dependent on how steady your hand is and how confident you are at drawing long, fast lines. You can see I'm being a bit too careful with my strokes and trying to stay on the safe side. Hopefully I can build that confidence and improve over time. Since this is a study, I'm trying to get as close to the reference photo as possible, but if I were to draw my own personal manga pages, I would allow myself to deviate from the sketch lines a bit. Long story short, inking all comes down to your skill and not the tools at all, because even with a micron pen or a regular pen, I feel the hand still needs a degree of precision and long-term practice. When it comes to drawing in dark clothing, I do try to draw the lightest areas first. So Chihiro, which is the character here, has a bit of a cross-hatching effect on his jacket. I try to get that done first before I go over the coat with a solid black and then shape out all of the light areas from there. And then I do the exact same thing for the foreground as well. And so, we have the completed left side of the drawing done. I think the most time consuming panel was definitely that bottom one, but overall, the background and the blood effect probably took the most time as well. I would say that inking this left side alone took me around 3 hours. Usually I like to say I'm a bit faster than that, but I think I also just got so sucked into those finer details that I didn't even realize that much time has passed. Now we are at the climax of the video. I tried so hard to hold off finishing this part until the end because, I mean, it's not every day I get to challenge myself drawing characters in a fisheye perspective. Started very easy by inking in the peephole first. Since I'm rapidly putting in lines at the edge of the page, I always try to add a sticky note where the line should abruptly end, just so that I can focus on adding those speed lines and get that nice uneven sketchy effect. And just like before when I colored in Chihiro, I'm drawing all of the effect lines of the lighter areas before I fill in the gaps in solid black. I think I generally go for the biggest object on the frame, and in this case, it would be Chihiro's hand and the sword handle up here, all the way at the front. When studying off of a master copy, I tend to draw off of reference points. So here I'm taking in account of how far things like Shihiro's head and the blade of the sword and all of the background are relative to the big hand and sword here. And that's just like the technique I use when I eyeball things. So to continue on with inking the rest of the body, I went ahead and drew in the character's head so that I can also use that as a frame of reference when drawing in the cloak and the rest of the body. Adding in the solid black really does hide all of my shoddy cross-hatching work, but it's basically just chipping away at repeating those steps over and over and over until the end. And with that said, that means we have earned ourselves time-lapse time. And we are almost at the finish line. You can see this is basically as good as finished if I were to just leave it as is, but you know me as someone who just cannot stop using Screentone, I will bring out these bad boys and add these in. I have used these green tones a lot in my previous manga recreation and comic work. I won't go over the specifics. Speaking of which, I should probably go ahead and make a standalone screen tone video. Anyways, the original drawing doesn't use that many tones outside of the background, so this step will be very brief. You basically cut a slightly larger piece of the screen tone and then use the adhesive backing to put it on the page, and then just cut out all of the unneeded spots. Screen tones are just that really nice final touch, and ta-da! I know I sped through a lot of the completed steps throughout the videos, so I'll leave a moment to see the final results. While I did enjoy recreating this manga page because, woo, what a page, there are so many epic action panels such as these ones throughout the manga, so if I were to recommend a currently running Shonen Jump manga, this is definitely a series to keep an eye on. Like mentioned before, I did recreate another Kagurabachi manga page previously, so if you would like to see that, it will be a link in the corner and on the description below. And before we wrap it up today, I like to take a moment to mention that there has been announcements made that an anime adaptation for Kagurabachi is in production. I think it's by Studio Sick Sick, which has done pretty cool games in the past. I cannot wait to see some of those sick action panels come to life in animation, and hopefully we'll bring in more new readers on this crazy ride. That's all for me today. Now you guys keep drawing, and I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye!